Hello everybody and welcome back to the Youth Ledger. I'm your host Shiven Diwakar, and this week we've seen some major developments, from the Senate's marathon debate on the One Big Beautiful Bill to the NATO Summit in The Hague, a US-China rare earths agreement, blistering heat waves across North America, and renewed Canada-US trade talks. A lot is happening and we need to cover it all, so let's dive right in. First, let's talk about the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Senate spent much of the past week in a tense vote-orama on the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, the Trump administration's sweeping piece of legislation that combines tax cuts, increased spending, and immigration reforms, which Republicans have been pushing to get done before the president's deadline of July 4th, this Friday. Under the reconciliation process, Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough struck down key Medicaid reform provisions, including eligibility changes in gender transition care. This means that those provisions now need 60 votes to pass, and President Trump is urging the Senate GOP to do exactly that. Some Republicans are still critical of the $3.3 trillion of debt that the Congressional Budget Office has projected the bill would add to the deficit, with $4.5 trillion in spending and $1.2 trillion in cuts. Despite backlash, business groups are pushing hard, and some GOP senators like Tom Tillis, 64-year-old senator from North Carolina, are stepping away from re-election. The Senate expects to finalize the bill soon and send it back to the House before the holiday. What I found interesting was that Elon Musk once again started ripping into the bill this last Saturday, accusing it of giving, quote, handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging the industries of the future, unquote. And I would agree to this. Although I can definitely recognize how much money there is in the fossil fuels industry, I think we all have to, at some point or another, seriously consider the prospect of switching to a more sustainable and reliable source of energy. Next, let's talk about the NATO Summit this week in The Hague, where leaders rallied around defense at a heightened level. Alliance members pledged to increase military spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, tripling previous targets, with Spain being the only member not to take part in this. Article 5, NATO's cornerstone principle of collective defense, was unequivocally reaffirmed, and discussions touched on missile strikes in Iran, Ukraine's status, and future threats. Notably, Trump was praised for pushing allies towards stronger commitments despite controversy over intelligence claims about the effectiveness of the US strikes in Iran throughout the week. This summit underscores two realities. First, the geopolitical landscape is shifting towards military backing as a security imperative. And second, economic capacity underpins that security. It costs real money to fund defense at that scale. In trade news, the US reached a deal with China to accelerate exports of rare earth materials, which are critical for high-tech, defense, and energy industries. Coming after months of policy wrangling and Chinese imposition of non-tariff barriers and licensing delays, the agreement aims to clear the bottlenecks. China's factory activity remains subdued, but slightly improved. June's manufacturing PMI, or Purchasing Managers Index, rose to 49.7, hinting at a fragile recovery. From a systems perspective, this shows how geopolitics influences supply chain resilience, and why markets may respond sharply when these materials become accessible or restricted. Back home, North America is facing record-breaking heat waves, with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association warning of prolonged high temperatures across the West, Gulf Coast, Northeast, and Midwest. The economic fallout is significant. Heat spikes reduce outdoor labor productivity, strain power systems, raise healthcare costs, and damage infrastructure. And these events cost the US around $162 billion in 2024, equivalent to nearly 1% of GDP. One can only hope that the data from 2025 will be better, but from how it feels here in Texas, I seriously doubt it. This is more than an environmental crisis. It's a policy and economic crisis affecting supply chains, work, and public health. Finally, Canada and the US have officially resumed trade discussions after Canada backed down on a planned digital services tax aimed at US tech firms. This move clears the path for a comprehensive Canada-US trade agreement, targeted for completion by July 21st, as agreed at the G7 summit. The markets responded with initial uncertainty, with stocks dipping slightly, but ended the week close to record highs as investors welcomed the resumed talks. Trade policy touches everything, from tech regulations to lumber tariffs. This isn't just international trade, it's the scaffolding of global economic integration. This week's events underscore one core message. Every major policy or political decision, be it a multi-trillion-dollar bill, a NATO defense pledge, rare earth trade deals, heatwave adaptation, or resuming trade talks, ripples through our everyday lives, economies, and global systems. Whether you're studying economics, environmental science, or engineering, these are not just headlines. They're building blocks of our future. So thank you for tuning into this deep dive of this week's biggest developments. If you found this episode insightful, subscribe and follow. The TikTok and YouTube pages are up, so take a look at those as well. And as always, please share your thoughts below. Signing out, this is Shiven Diwakar. See you next time on the Youth Ledger.